Welcome, folks. This is All Minus One Story Time with Bill. How are we doing today? So today, being a Monday, we are going to continue with our COVID-19, The Great Reset by Klaus Schwab. We're going to delve into the material here. Now, we're at this little part down here at the bottom. This is 1.2.1.1, Uncertainty. I have no idea why he divides his chapters up in such a way. It's just kind of a silly way of doing things. Like, why wouldn't it be 0.2.2? It's 0.1.1. Anyways, whatever. I'm going to keep going, guys. By the way, I may start doing these a little bit more frequently or pre-recording them when I have more free time and releasing them. That way, we're not lagging forever and getting this read by the end of the year. Now, I don't think it'll take that long. This isn't a deep read. But between me adding commentary and, of course, reading this about once a week or so, sometimes twice a week, it has been the norm. It's just going to take a while to get there. But we do need to know where this starts at, what these ideas are, where they're coming from, what they're saying to the world versus what is actually going on behind the scenes, which is why I'm doing this. So let's get started here. A high degree of ongoing uncertainty surrounds the COVID-19, makes it incredibly difficult to precisely assess the risk it possesses. As with all new risks that are agents of fear, this creates a lot of social anxiety that impacts economic behavior. Social anxiety is always tampered down by leadership. Any good leader will always maintain the mood of the group. And as I have said often in my other segments, which you should watch if you are not, we have poor leadership. We have abysmal leadership. We don't have leadership. We have a group of self-interested individuals who are essentially a little cabal deciding, oh, well, we have some power. You can have some power too. Let's divvy it up this way. We don't have folks stepping up and saying, hey, society, here is the truth. Here is the reality. We need your help in this. I need you to do this. I expect you to be responsible in this. Part of leadership is imparting responsibility to your subordinates. They will never learn to become leaders, and they will never learn to become responsible until they are given responsibility. And if they are not, they are kept in an infantile state. Has anyone ever given a baby or a small child true authority, true responsibility? Not really. No. Now, there might be some idiotic parents out there that give small children responsibility that is beyond the scope of their abilities. But generally speaking, we know better. And if you want to keep a population enslaved, then you do not give them leadership. In any case, let's get to this text. It says, an overwhelming consensus has emerged within the global scientific community that Zhenghui of the Chinese leading scientist had it right when he said in April 2020, this is very likely to be an epidemic that coexists with humans for a long time because seasonal and sustained within human bodies and becomes seasonal and sustained within human bodies. Yeah, duh. Yeah, you know why? Because it's just a cold strain. It's a very potentially severe cold depending on your pre-existing health conditions. Do you have obesity, heart disease, lung disease, renal failure? Do you have enough vitamin D? Very important, huge. Are you in good general health? Ever since the pandemic started, we have been bombarded daily with the relentless stream of data. But in June 2020, roughly half a year after the beginning of the outbreak, our knowledge is still very patchy, and as a result, we still don't really know just how dangerous the coof is. Untrue, covered this the other day, completely bunk. We do know because we had studies coming out of the WHO saying exactly what it was back in January and February. I covered this just last Wednesday on the Ends Justify the Memes, the live show that I do. Go over to that channel. Go check it out. It is in the very beginning, the very first memes that I do, just this past Wednesday. It is there. I can promise you. That stream is entitled something like Remembering Waco and Ruby Ridge, because the anniversary of that had just occurred, and this was a government overreach, despite what you might think of those individuals in those situations. So in any case, we knew everything we needed to know way back when. This is a complete lie. They keep telling you that we don't have the information, we don't have the data. It has been over a year, folks. This was released in October in Wuhan. We knew about it. The reports weren't coming out until late November. They took a scientist in China. They hid him away, locked him up, and then they released him because he was a whistleblower after he had the coup and the man died. And then the Democrats tried to say this wasn't a big deal, and then turned around, did an about face, as they always do, and have made it the biggest deal ever, when it is actually, they were right on their first take. But I think that President Trump was right to do what he did initially, and so was any other nation that was trying to lock down or control the flow of people through the borders, because we needed to know. And we weren't getting reliable information in the beginning because China and the WHO were controlling said information. So, despite the deluge of scientific papers published on the coup, its infection fatality rate, the number of cases measured or not, that result in death, remains a matter of debate, around 0.4 and 0.5 and possibly up to 1%. There is no debate. It's how you're tracking this. If there are secondary causes, then those are the causes. And I mean secondary as in, first comes the coup, second comes marriage, third comes whomever in the baby carriage, right? No, I mean, if you get pneumonia because you had the cold or you had a flu, did you die of the flu or did you die of pneumonia? You died of pneumonia. If you had a heart attack, you died of a heart attack. We don't say that you died of a heart attack because you ate like crap. Well, actually, he died because he ate all kinds of processed food, and he ate too many vegetable oils and too much sugar. Therefore, he had severe amounts of inflammation in his body, so it was the food that killed him. Technically, yes, but what did you actually die from? A heart attack. Your heart failed you. The ratio of undetected to confirmed cases, the rate of transmission, the asymptomatic individuals, the seasonality effect, the length of the incubation period, blah, 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 blah. It's all nonsense. The national infection rate, progress in terms of understanding each of these is being made, but they and many other elements remain unknown. To a large extent, for policymakers and public officials, the prevailing level of uncertainty makes it very difficult to devise the right public health strategy and the contaminant economic strategy. Commitment economic strategy? I don't know. What is that word, guys? I don't know. I can't read. This should not come as a surprise, and Rimmerone, a professor of epidemiology at UCLA, confesses this is a novel virus new to humanity, and nobody knows what will happen. We do know. We had a ton of information in the beginning. It just was not truthful information, and we have a ton more now. Such circumstances require a good dose of humanity because in the world of Peter Poy, one of the world's leading virologists, the more we learn about the coronavirus, the more questions arise. The COOF is a master of disguise that manifests itself with protein symptoms that are confounding the medical community. This probably also, being a true statement, is part of this whole idea that this actually did come from a lab and it is a gain-of-function study. That we don't know any virus that operates like this, which is why it's most likely genetically mutated purposefully in order to, combat, to learn how to combat these super type viruses, and it escaped. Or they leaked it. Again, speculation. But perhaps they did leak it. Perhaps this was part of the plan. We never will know because the truth about this will not come out unless we find documents some years later. And the only way that's going to happen is if China somehow falls out of power and we know they're about to become the world leaders. Or at least if you believe what I believe based on all of the evidence. It is first and foremost a respiratory disease, but for a small, sizable number of patients, symptoms range from cardiac inflammation and digestive problems to kidney infection, blood clots, and meningitis. Now, that's interesting too, because meningitis, so the meninges are part of your nervous system, and meningitis is the literal inflammation and infection of such a thing, and it will make you go quite crazy. But the causes of it are numerous. As far as blood clots go, I don't think that the coof is causing that. Respiratory issues like low pulse ox, that is oxygen in your blood, will cause you to have a heart attack as your body struggles to get enough oxygen. And the pump, what happens is your heart pumps harder and faster, trying to get more and more oxygen in as it's being oxygen depleted. And that's why you have cardiac arrest. So blood clots, likely to happen in such a circumstance as well. Kidney infections, I'm not sure about. Digestive problems seems to be a common occurrence, but many people say, "Oh, I had a stomach cold, had a stomach bug." So we don't really know about that. Our friend over on the Ends Justify the Memes, Kizza GT, who's been on several times, just covered this, and I spoke with him a few weeks back. That is, he just had the coof. Spoke with him a few weeks back. He told me that his digestive system was a mess. But again, I'm really skeptical of how the testing works and everything else. What are we actually testing for? I mean, I don't get sick too often anymore, but I can tell you when I worked in the jail and I was exposed to things, I was getting sick quite a lot throughout the year. Why? Well, because I'm exposed to a lot of people in a close-knit environment, and it didn't matter precisely how healthy I was, although there was years here and there where I was doing well. But basically doing shift work, working nights, getting a lack of sleep, just running from here to there, constantly working, sometimes double shifts, often 12-hour shifts, your body gets worn down. You don't eat right. You're tired. And you're more susceptible to disease. In addition, many people who recover are left with chronic kidney and heart problems as well as lasting neurological effects. And I'm not sure about that, but right now, look, man, there is a fighter in the UFC who was coming up who was just phenomenal, and people are like, "Whoa, this guy's insane." Performed 3 times last year. We're supposed to have a big fight a few weeks back, and it was rescheduled for this weekend. And he's talking about retiring now because he got the coof, and supposedly it's had long-lasting effects, and he got it way back in December. So it's possible. Or perhaps he got something else, and we're just labeling everything the coof. In the face of uncertainty, it makes sense to resort to scenarios to get a better sense of what lies ahead. With the pandemic, it is well understood that a wide range of potential outcomes is possible, subject to unforeseen events and random occurrences, but 3 plausible scenarios stand out. Each may help to delineate the contours of what the next 2 years could be like. This guy's talking 2 years. Now, folks, I could be mistaken. I could be wrong, but I have looked at the numbers many a times. And you can go back and comb through my channel for those things. When I have looked at the numbers, the rate of deaths this past year, 2020, was the same and actually a little bit lower than prior years. We were right on schedule. We all know that the flu magically has disappeared. So what is going on? How many people do you know that have had this thing, and how many people do you know have died of this thing? I know one person that has died, a cousin of mine. He was a little bit older. He had heart issues. Unfortunately, he passed away. God rest his soul. On the other hand, I probably know 100 or some odd people that have for sure had this. For sure. Now, there are other people like my wife, who used to travel a lot because of her job, who believes that she had it at some point before it was the thing that it is. I may have had it. I have friends who think they may have had it. I have a friend who I just saw the other day who had it a few weeks back, and he was perfectly fine. And his girlfriend that he lives with was with him the entire time, had to quarantine, and never got it. Never tested positive for it. with the pandemic, as well understood a wide range of potential outcomes as possible. Yeah, for the next 2 years. Why 2 years? That seems kind of silly. Sorry about that, folks. I just lost my spot there. Yeah, we should just be acting normal, like many people were saying in the beginning, because this isn't worth what we are doing. But it's being done because of the Great Reset agenda. These three plausible scenarios are all based on the core assumption that the pandemic could go on affecting us until 2022. And have you noticed this seems to be a common theme in the narrative out there? Why is this affecting us until 2022? Why are we getting vaccines and not being fine? And by the way, these are prophylactics, folks. These are not. The jab is not a classical technical vaccine. That word has a meaning. Thus, they can help us reflect upon what lies ahead. In the first scenario, the initial wave that began in March is followed by a series of smaller waves that occur through mid-2020, and then over a 1 to 2 year period. It's almost like this guy predicted the future because that's what the news reported, but that's not really what happened. Actually, what we saw was a very large spike in the beginning, a huge drop, another little bit of a spike, a huge drop, and this is cross-culturally across the world. It's the same everywhere. This has been around longer than we are pretending like it was around. We're pretending like it hit the world last March. The reality is Wuhan is a city of millions of people, tens of millions. It is a center of international trade. This was at least going around that city in October. By November, this was global. The entire world was infected by this for 3 or 4 months. That is not speculation, folks. That is exactly how these things work. That is the data. That is the facts. 3 or 4 months, this was being spread across the world before any nation started doing anything about it outside of China. And then over a 1 or 2 year period, gradually diminishing to 2021, like peaks and valleys. The occurrence and amplitude of these peaks and valleys vary geographically, depend on the specific mitigation measures that are implemented. In the second scenario, the first wave is followed by a larger wave that takes place in the third and fourth quarters of 2020. And that really didn't happen, like during the Spanish flu. The scenarios requires the reimplementation of mitigation measures around the fourth quarter of 2020. Again, this guy put this out back in the late spring, got it together pretty quickly, almost like it was being written ahead of time. And somehow it was out there. And once it was out there, he's making predictions about how things sort of actually went. Well, why is that? Well, to some degree, because you can. But the death rates never went up. They actually have gone down. But you can because epidemiology, folks. And many epidemiologists do not agree with the measures taken. The spread of infection and to prevent healthcare systems from being overwhelmed in the third scenario, not seen from past influenza pandemics, but possible for the COOF to slow burn and ongoing transmission in cases occurrence follow the first wave of 2020, but without a clear wave pattern, just with smaller ups and downs like for the other scenarios. This pattern varies geographically and is to a certain extent determined by the nature of the earlier mitigation measures put into place in each particular country or region. Cases of infection and death continue to occur, but do not require the reinstitution of mitigation measures. Now, this up and down and this difference in nations is kind of silly because the numbers are actually the same regardless. But one thing we can say about some populations and more people dying who are in the more at-risk class, those people who are over 65, those people who are basically at life expectancy, who a lot of them would have died anyways within a year or two. What we can say is that the health of the population matters immensely. The amount of vitamin D, the obesity, the heart disease, etc., etc. Regardless, it's pretty much the same. Now, I know there's a lot of buzz out there that this is affecting the marginalized communities. They're always marginalized, no matter how far ahead they get along. They will always be victims, right? But the black and brown people that it affects, well, I can tell you right now, I've talked about this many times before. There's a larger portion of that community of those folks of that skin tone who live in poverty or who live with less wealth. I should put it that way. Not necessarily in poverty. Although if we're looking globally, yes, poverty. But with less wealth. And with that, they're making often poor health choices. There are certain medical conditions that are genetic, right? We kind of know that about many of things. Alcoholism, heart disease, yada, 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 down the line. Well, we see the same thing. Like African Americans tend to have higher levels of blood pressure. Now, is that nature or nurture? It's hard to say. But, black folk in the U.S. tend to be heavier. That's just the thing that happens, right? You're more likely to have heart disease if you're heavier. And I don't think that it's really a racial thing, because if we look at the numbers and we correct for the economic demographics, what we see, and this was done in England a long time ago, is that, again, the folks that are less economically prosperous are the ones who are affected the most. And those are the folks who tend to eat not as good. And we can come up with all kinds of reasons why that is. One of the biggest reasons is because those are the people who are less educated, folks. They're the people who are less smart. Not always. Just because you're born poor, like into a poorer family, doesn't mean you're going to be a moron by any means. But a lot of people are there in those situations because they're not super smart people. They don't have a lot of opportunity in their life, and that's just where they're at. And that's why they never improve their lives. They're simple folks, and that is okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But let's not make this about race or poor people or whatever. Let's talk about the actual factors, like your diet, your exercise, the amount of vitamin D you're getting, vitamin C intake, all of those things, your general health. And we're really, really bad in the Western world about health. In fact, right now, we're being told that veganism's perfectly fine. Even though there was just a study saying that veganism was not good for nursing mothers and pregnant mothers. But that goes against the WHO, who said on a panel, I always forget the number, you can look this up, but it's something like 6 guys, like 4 of them were vegans or something like that. And they outvoted the non-vegans. It might have been more folks than that, but there was something like a panel at the WHO who decided that, no, a vegan diet was perfectly fine for pregnant and nursing mothers. Yeah, perfectly fine if you want your child to have stunted growth, malnourishment, mental deficiencies because their brain isn't growing properly, because they're not getting the proper amount of omega-3 fatty acids. And you could say, well, Bill, you can get that from flaxseed and this and that and whatever else. Yeah, but not in the same bioavailability, folks. Trust me, if there's something I know, it is this topic. In any case, let's finish this out and get out of here. So I got another little paragraph left. It says, a large number of scientists seem to agree with the framework offered by these 3 scenarios. Whichever of the 3 the pandemic follows, they all mean, as the authors explicitly state, that policymakers must be prepared to deal with at least another 18 to 24 months of significant COOF activity, with hotspots popping up periodically in diverse geographic areas. As we will argue next, a full-fledged economic recovery cannot take place until the virus is defeated or behind us. And once again, I disagree. The economic portion of this was not because people could not go to work, because they were sick, because they were lining up hospitals, because millions were dying. No. The economic portion of this was the government saying millions will die, will be sick and in hospitals, therefore you can't go to work. And it just wasn't true. And in fact, we would be done and over with this if we had not done such a thing. Look at what China did. Look what South Korea did. Go look up what South Korea did with this. Look at Japan. Go look at Sweden. Look at the nations that did not have lockdowns like we said that they would. Or they should. Go look at Argentina, which had the longest, biggest lockdown and one of the highest infection rates of any nation. 60% of their people had this. Death rate, exactly the same. Didn't make a difference. Did not make a lick of difference. And there's a country that's already highly socialized. And you know what they're going to do to pay for it? They're just going to tax the rich, because that's what they do. That is what they do, folks. In any case, you all, I will return with this on Thursday. Now, with that said, as I mentioned earlier, I'll probably do the next section. I'll probably pre-record some of these when I get a chance and then post them a little bit later. And I probably will start doing that on Thursday because I have a bunch of stuff I got to get done this week outside of, the videos that I make. I will still be doing my regular content. Right now, I'm debating about not doing any content at all on Wednesday here on All Minus One. But for now, just keep an eye out on the quick shots because I most likely will still do that. It does not take me that long to produce one of those. And, of course, the Ends Justify the Memes, which is the best show ever, the best live show ever. I can't believe you guys aren't watching it yet. You haven't liked, shared, subscribed, all that stuff, right? No, we are slowly growing in this algorithmically challenged time. I'll put it that way. So, guys, hey, hit that like button, share, subscribe, the thing. And this has been All Minus One Story Times, The Great Reset. I wish you all well.